Welcome back to Silent Stories Updates. Here we share stories that stay hidden in plain sight, stories that carry lessons about patience, courage, and the strength to stand tall even when the world tries to push you down. Today's story is one of quiet endurance, an unexpected twist of fate, and a man who waited for the right moment to turn everything upside down. It is a story about land, about pride, about loss, and about the sweet taste of justice when it finally arrives. They called him stubborn. Some even called him foolish. Others whispered that maybe he had finally lost his mind. Because when bulldozers rolled across his pasture and surveyors drove stakes into the ground, he did not fight them. When the sound of hammers and saws echoed through the valley, he did not call the sheriff. When families moved in, laughing on porches built on his soil, he did not scream or pound on doors. Instead, he sat on his old wooden porch every evening, watching silently. Like a man guarding a secret, the land had been in his family for 3 generations. 90 acres of oak trees, rolling hills, and a pond where his father had taught him how to fish. It wasn't just dirt and grass to him. It was memory. It was history. It was the last piece of his family's legacy that the city had not yet swallowed whole. Developers had been circling for years. They came with thick envelopes, with polished smiles and contracts dripping with zeros. But every time, he turned them away. He would shake his head, lean back in his chair, and say the same words. This land is not for sale. The homeowners association next door, though, saw it differently. They saw his pasture as the missing piece in their picture-perfect neighborhood. They had plans for Oak Creek Estates, a sprawling subdivision of pristine lawns, identical mailboxes, and rules about everything from the color of garage doors to the height of hedges. But they could not complete their dream without his land. Then one morning, without warning, surveyors appeared on his property. At first, he thought it was a mistake. But soon, construction trucks rolled in, and concrete foundations were poured. He checked his mailbox, checked his phone, checked the courthouse records. He had not sold a single acre. He had not signed away a single right. And yet, houses were rising from the ground as if the land belonged to someone else. Neighbors assumed he had finally given in, that the old man had taken the money and moved on. Strangers waved from driveways as if they belonged. The HOA president even knocked on his door one afternoon, a smug smile plastered across his face, and welcomed him to the community. He did not answer. He did not stop them either. Not yet. At night, the sound of construction kept him awake. The smell of fresh wood and asphalt filled the air. Children's laughter echoed across streets that did not exist a year before. Some nights, he wanted to storm into the middle of it all, holding the deed high above his head, shouting until someone listened. But he didn't. Instead, he remembered his father's words. The strongest move is not always the loudest. Sometimes, the strongest move is patience. So he waited. Weeks became months. Months became years. For 2 long years, he watched as they built 96 homes on his pasture. He watched families move in, watched the HOA hold its block parties, watched the sign go up at the entrance, bold letters announcing Oak Creek Estates. They planted trees, installed street lamps, and painted curbs. They collected dues, made rules, and handed out fines. It looked, from the outside, like everything belonged to them, but it didn't. It still belonged to him when the homes were finished, when the HOA had poured every cent into their dream, when families were finally comfortable and rooted in their new lives. He made his move. It started with a letter, quietly filed with the court. Then came a summons. Then a date. He walked into the courtroom wearing his best jacket, not new but neatly pressed. The HOA leaders sat on the other side, smug in their expensive suits, convinced this was just another old man trying to hold back progress. Their lawyer spoke first, his voice sharp and full of confidence. He talked about the good of the community, about the inevitability of development, about how one man should not stand in the way of growth. Then his lawyer, an old friend of his father's, stood and pulled a weathered envelope from his briefcase. Inside was a piece of paper older than most of the people in the room. The deed, his deed, signed by his grandfather in 1954, notarized, sealed, and undeniable. The judge studied the paper for what felt like an eternity. The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioner. Finally, the judge looked up, his voice firm and steady. "This land belongs to the plaintiff." The words crashed over the room like thunder. HOA board members whispered furiously, their faces pale. Homeowners gasped, their entire lives suddenly balanced on the thin edge of legality. They had built 96 homes on land that was not theirs, and they had never seen it coming. What followed was chaos. Lawsuits piled up. Settlements were scrambled together. Families begged him to let them stay, some with tears in their eyes, some with anger in their voices. They had been misled, deceived into believing they were safe. He knew most of them were innocent. They were pawns in a game played by people who thought they could bulldoze their way over him. So he made a choice. He did not want revenge. He did not want to destroy families. He wanted respect for what was his. Many families bought their homes from him directly at fair value, finally paying the rightful owner. Some left, unable to forgive the deception. The HOA, however, did not survive. It crumbled under the weight of lawsuits, fines, and shame. The board dissolved. Its leaders disappeared into silence. The grand sign at the entrance was torn down. Today, when he walks his land, it looks different. The pasture is gone, replaced by streets and sidewalks. The pond still glimmers, though now children fish where he once sat with his father. The oak trees still stand tall, casting shade over houses that never should have been built. And yet, he does not resent it, because in the end, the land is still his. His family's name remains etched into the deed, unbroken, untaken, unforgotten. Some still call him crazy for letting them build before stepping forward. But he only smiles, because sometimes the strongest power is not in shouting, not in fighting, but in waiting until the other side has placed everything on the table, and then reminding them whose table it truly is. This story carries a lesson deeper than land and houses. It is about patience. It is about holding on when everyone tells you to give up. It is about remembering that justice doesn't always come quickly, but when it does, it arrives like a storm no one can stop. Patience is not weakness. Patience is strategy. Patience is power. And sometimes, patience is the only weapon you need to win. Thank you for listening to Silent Stories Updates. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of the value of standing firm and waiting for the right moment, stay with us for more untold stories that deserve to be heard.